Thanks so much for joining me today, Annam. It's really great to have you here. You've done some incredible work as an entrepreneur and teacher in the health and business space. Today, we're looking forward to hearing about your journey and insights specifically on AI. So let's get started. First, can you tell us a bit about your background? How did you get to
Yeah,
where
I
you are
mean,
today?
first of all, thank you for having me on this podcast. I think talking about AI, especially at a younger age like yourself, is definitely something that's important as it keeps growing. Um, I guess a little bit of background about myself. I kind of stumbled onto entrepreneurship by accident. I think a lot of people that you talk to and people who are involved with startups and places like that, a lot of the times it does happen by accident. You don't go into it thinking about being part of a startup or starting a business, but somehow a lot of people just end up there. So currently, I'm a principal consultant and founder of Think Lean LLC, where I teach other students who are at universities, at community colleges, at high school students, how to convert lab-based technology or something that they might be working on in their in their garages and translate that to bring it into customers' hands. So it started off as an accident in college where I went to UC Berkeley. I desperately needed some college credits to fulfill my, I think it was 12 or 19 credits at that semester. And there was a class that opened up. It was only technically supposed to be for MBA students, and it was all about the lean transfer method and lean startup. I thought it was interesting. I signed up for it. And they actually kicked out all of the other undergrads from that class, but I kind of fought for my spot there, and the teacher didn't kick me out, and the rest is history. So that was my first introduction, and 7, 8 years later, like I now teach the same principles that I learned about back then.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, I guess especially over here, I think being in the Bay Area, it's like I feel like business and entrepreneurship is kind of thrown in your face. But I definitely agree that especially for a lot of other people, it can kind of be like, oh, this business thing just kind of leaps onto you. You have this idea, you see this problem that you want to solve, and then you kind of jump on that train, and then a lot
Yeah.
of the time it leads to a lot of success. So I definitely see
Mm-hmm.
your experience over there. That's really cool. Okay, so now I just want to ask, I know that you have many different experiences, such as instructor at the Northwest National Science Foundation Innovation Course Hub and at Berkeley Haas. So could you tell us how about these experiences, any of these experiences, even not the ones I just named? And could you tell us which one was your favorite and how you got these
Ooh, that's a good
opportunities in the first
question.
place?
Um, so I live in breed lean startup. I teach a lot. So I teach with the Northwest iCore Hub, which is based out of Berkeley. That was my first exposure to the method in the first place. But I've also taught at different locations, such as the NIH seed program. The U.S. State Department did a program with GIST, which is a Global Innovation Science and Technology, where we teach similar principles to people within the country as well as worldwide. I got to fly out to Singapore and Thailand in the past to teach similar concepts. However, I also teach some colleges in workshops along the way, and I think for me, because I might be biased, I got my double major in bioengineering and translational medicine, so I am very STEM focused. So I would have to say like iCore is my favorite thing to teach because I see a lot of myself in the people that go through the program. They're STEM focused. There might be scientists or engineers or have a more technical background, and it's their first time learning about business and just seeing people's eyes light up and getting them out of their comfort zone. Some of them might be a little bit less extroverted. Maybe they're introverts, and getting them to have a peek of what it's like to find a product market fit and get that eureka moment and aha moment is it's one of the best feelings in the world. So I would have to say, iCore is truly something special.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and especially I kind of relate to the idea of being a STEM student. In school, I think my favorite subjects are usually like math and physics, and similar subjects to that. So it's definitely interesting, especially because I see a lot of my classmates as well. I think I've always been into business mostly because, like I said before, the sort of environment I've been raised in. But a lot of them as well, they're very smart kids, very intelligent peers of mine. But like they're they're mostly
Mm-hmm.
into the sort of academic part. So, it'd be really interesting to see them sort of go into the business section of things, and also being having you as a mentor, for example, could really help them as well. So I definitely can see what you're doing, especially from personal experience and from what
Yeah,
I've
and if
seen
I could
in
just
my high
add
school
on
so
to that,
far.
like the lean startup method for for people who might not be aware, you use the scientific method to run a business. So the reason why a bunch of STEM students succeed in that theory is because you're using experiments, or you're using interviews, you're talking to people, you're going out and doing customer discovery, and using that as data points to validate or invalidate your assumptions about the business model. So it is meant to be for these STEM students as well. So that's a perfect tie in there.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that as well. And so next, I wanted to ask, being a founder, what was the
Ooh,
biggest challenge you
so
faced so
I've
far?
been part of a few startups along the way. Once I got exposed, I tried everything in the books. I did ed tech. I did a bunch of biotech startups. A lot of them failed. They didn't even get off the ground for I think half of them, because I found out there was no product market fit. And then some of them, I was a part of another team called Voyage Biomedical. We actually got acquired after we finished a program called iCore and used Lean Startup. So I've seen the highs and I've seen the lows. What I wish I knew kind of starting out, and there's, I don't think there's any easy fix to this, is as a founder, someone who's might be a little bit more um, technically in tune, but not necessarily business tuned. It's really hard to learn all of the hats that you need to learn. Customer relationships and talking to investors and figuring out finance and books and you have a very small team to begin with. So it's really important to find other co-founders, other team members who have expertise that can complement yours, and carving out the time to learn other things that can help you succeed. And I think something that probably a lot of us are maybe have challenges with is asking for help, and knowing when to delegate, and knowing when to ask for advice. And that's something you just kind of learn along the way, but it's a lot of hats all at once in the beginning, so you really got to prioritize and figure out what you want to focus on.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And to add on, I think one example is that even just today in English class, we were watching this video and it was talking about how growth and learning mostly happens in groups, and it's very important to collaborate with others if you really want to grow. So I think adding on to that is just generally speaking, in every single perspective, not even just in business, but being with others and collaborating with others really just is a great way to help you grow. And I think especially in businesses, finding people who have specific expertise. So for example, if your business, maybe you have a lot of engineers or you have a lot of engineering capabilities in your small team, but you don't have
Mm-hmm.
really someone for sales or marketing, then it's obviously important to find someone to fill in those gaps and find someone who's an
Exactly.
expert in those fields. So I definitely agree
100%.
with your idea. So yeah. And then, so next, I just want to ask, have you applied AI to a business project or something similar? And if so, could you tell us about that experience? And if not, how have you seen AI be applied to the fields that
Yeah,
you
I
work
mean,
in, if at all?
I feel like AI is everywhere nowadays. There's so many teams that go through my programs that have some element of AI in their startup. In terms of applying AI to businesses and projects, I more important, particularly towards customer discovery and um, teaching other folks about lean startup. I use ChatGPT a lot to help teams um, find out how they can write the best intro emails and when they send out cold emails to generate leads. There's so many tools out there right now, and Apollo IO is another one that can help make life easier for teams to find people to reach out to get valuable insights. Something that as I've been kind of tinkering and playing around with some other ideas I might have for entrepreneurship, I'm sure you've heard about vibe coding, right? Like it's like something that it makes it so accessible for anyone really to mock up an idea, to create a proof of concept by just talking about it, and a couple years ago, this was almost impossible to do. So we've definitely come a long way. I've used it a lot to kind of get what I'm trying to convey to people, to put MVPs in front of people's eyes. Another thing that I've used ChatGPT for, and just these AI tools in general, is and then I'll just backtrack a bit. Like I barely know how to code. I Tableau, Snowflake, things like that. They're all new to me. I didn't do a data science course when I was an undergrad. I was a bioengineer. So I've really leaned on ChatGPT and tools like that to help me learn. And as I've learned how to create queries or play around with Tableau, I'm able to do it better now. And as I've learned, make more valuable impact. So a lot of great applications. Those are just a few of them, really.
Right. I've definitely seen what you just said. I've seen it around a lot, especially with vibe coding. People who didn't know how to code, they've been able to do it now. And it's really good because coding really is almost an essential skill nowadays for almost all fields. I mean, programming applications such as applications, basically, they're always just being applied to every field. So knowing how to code has always been very important, but now it's just so much more accessible. It definitely helps founders out a lot, especially if they're more lacking on
Mm-hmm.
the technical end. I definitely agree. Things like vibe coding have
Yeah.
really been able to help people out. And so next I wanted to ask, where do you see AI generally going within the next year, maybe 5 years, a decade, or even a century? Or if you don't have specific predictions for each of those intervals, you can just say generally, where do you see AI
Ooh.
going in the future?
I guess let me talk more generally. I think it's only going to get better with time as more people use it. That's kind of given. It's getting trained as we speak, as more people kind of experiment. I think it's going to be a great tool for people to help make decisions faster. I think there's an application for AI in almost every industry, and it probably has been touched in every industry in some way whatsoever. So I think it's definitely going to be more widespread use of AI. I do have a concern though when it comes to it. I don't think every solution needs AI. And that might just be my hot take there. I always tell students when they're part of my program and they come in with these value propositions of, oh, look, we have AI. I always kind of challenge them and say, like, okay, so what problem are you really solving for your customer? And does that problem or does that value proposition need to be around AI? Can you do it without it? But really, what's the value proposition that you're offering if you choose to include AI? Just because you have AI in your value proposition doesn't really tell anyone anything. But that's another soapbox for another day. But I do think it's going to penetrate every single industry that we see. It'll help people do their jobs better, and kind of what I'm hoping for is kind of the opposite what's currently happening that we're seeing. But what I'm hoping for is that it's going to help enable people to think more creatively as the more mundane, repetitive tasks get taken care of with AI. So I'm excited to see the possibilities. I know there's pessimists out there too, but I think there is some positive impact that could be made too.
Yeah, so what you said about AI evolving, I definitely agree. I think AI is only going to get better as we've seen in the past few years. That trend is probably going to continue. But specifically with what you were saying about people just sort of hopping on the AI train just because it's popular and not really using it specifically for a business idea or using it specifically for a business idea when they really don't need to. So this is
Sure.
actually related to another question I was going to ask. I was going to ask, what warning do you have for students using AI? And so what I was going to give an example exactly what you said, where some people who are creating startups who are creating businesses, they're just like, oh, okay, AI is popular now. We have to apply it to our business basically. But what I was going to say was that AI is basically just a tool, and whether you need to use it for your business or not just depends on the problem you're solving and all the
100%.
potential solutions. So
Yeah, no,
you can add on to that
100%.
point
Like,
now.
and I think you're right on, right? Like, AI can be a tool for you to help your customers, but like, there's so many studies right now too about the profit margins and the true cost of AI and data centers and things like that. I think at the end of the day, if you're creating something and you're trying to solve a problem, then really focus on solving that problem. Whether or not you use AI to do it shouldn't be the sole center of why you're trying to do that thing. I know it's hot in the investment world with VCs. They love AI, and I get it. But at the end of the day, like if you're not solving a customer problem and they're not willing to pay you to solve their problem, whether you have AI in it or not is not going to matter. So, yeah, I think, Imran, you're exactly right.
Yeah, thank you. So next, I just want to ask, what advice do you have for students who want to build startups, and how do you suggest they use AI in their journey, especially those who want to use AI in their businesses, but obviously sometimes it's
Let's
not the
see.
best solution.
AI for students generally building startups. I think again, kind of tying into one of the previous questions. I think AI is going to be a great tool to help people make decisions faster and find things faster. Like part of our curriculum is doing customer discovery and reaching out to people, and there's a lot of manual tasks that takes a lot of time. For example, finding people to talk to, writing an email, taking interview notes on your computer, and that all can be significantly reduced now with using things like ChatGPT, Apollo AI, Plod AI is a great interview note-taking AI tool, and things like that can definitely help make the process be more efficient. So I think it's a great tool for, especially if you're just starting off with doing customer discovery and talking to potential customers. You can definitely use it that way for customer discovery.
Yeah, I definitely see it. I think especially with the more sort of mundane tasks, not that customer discovery is mundane, but especially for those more repetitive tasks, AI can definitely be helpful
Exactly.
for those especially as well. And so, yeah. And also, this question kind of relates to what we were talking about before, where both of us are sort of more STEM based, we're more technical. So, what are some soft skills you think students should develop in parallel with
Yeah,
technical
that's a
skills?
great question, and like kind of and like I mentioned, right, I teach technical people all the time. So trying to explain things in the layman terms, like the mom test, is a really great skill to learn. Being able to break down very complex technical details in very bite-sized pieces, depending on who you're speaking with as an audience, and something as a founder, as someone who's doing customer discovery, or someone who's trying to market the idea and socialize the idea. You need to be able to convey your idea or your concept in different ways depending on who you're speaking with. So definitely try practicing the mom test, like, the next time that you're working on a very complex assignment or a technical problem. See if you can explain it in a very easy way that even someone else's mom could understand, or your mom could understand. I think that's definitely hugely impactful. And kind of tying into that, another skill that really we teach in iCore is again doing customer discovery, talking to people. What's that one book, Talking to Humans? Very great book. Talking to strangers, being able to get out of your comfort zone and strike up a conversation and ask the good questions. Really be inquisitive, and not be afraid to learn. It's a great skill that ties in with the technical skills as well. And then another one, and Ron, you can tell me if I'm running out of time, is being able to handle rejection.
You're good.
And I always say, like, entrepreneurship and lean startup method, you're gonna get really good at rejection by the time you finish up doing the 100 interviews or however many interviews you plan on doing, because people are not gonna answer back. They're not gonna reply to your emails. You might have someone ghost you, have someone set up an interview call, but then they don't show up. Those things are gonna happen, and like over time, like you're gonna get so much better with dealing with rejection that it doesn't even faze you anymore, and then you can move on to the next thing. So I think it's a very good skill to learn to be good at, not just for business and startups, but just in general, like life skills that you'll learn through entrepreneurship.
Especially with your last point, I think the best way to summarize it is just having resilience and grit even when you're rejected, even when you fall down, just getting back up, just keep on going on. So I think one example for me is just I remember I applied for this internship in my freshman year of high school, and it was like the only internship I applied for. I was pretty sure I was gonna get in, which in hindsight, obviously, I shouldn't have been sure. I shouldn't have been certain, but still, I was just very overconfident. And then I remember getting the email that I had been rejected, and I just felt terrible about it. I remember it kind of ruined my day that when I got that result. But in the end, my dad specifically taught me this lesson. He
Mm-hmm.
told me to just be resilient and learn from your mistake. Like I should have applied to more internships. I should have looked for more opportunities instead of just relying on this one avenue. And so in general, I just learned a lesson that day, and it's exactly what you said. It's just learning that rejection isn't the end, and you should still keep going
100%.
even
And
when you
and
fall
grit
down,
is like the
basically.
perfect word for it. And kind of tying in, I know I talked about talking to strangers or talking to humans as one book that's really impactful here. But I don't know if you've ever read this, but Grit is one of my favorite all time favorite books. I think it's by Angela something. I think Angela Duckworth. Really great book. It also explains just
Yeah.
successful entrepreneurs and even like people who were in sports and really successful and how they just didn't stop and they dealt with rejection and they just kept getting better, and that's the one thing setting a lot of people apart from the rest is just having that skill of grit and just keeping going, even though things might be obstacles in your way.
Yeah, I just searched up this book. It looks good. I think I'll probably read this one
Hmm.
next. I haven't heard about it before, but yeah. But in general, yeah, I think grit is definitely very important. And so now I just want to ask, this is specifically tailored towards students watching this around my age or maybe even in college. So are there any opportunities such as internships or programs that you know of for high schoolers, both AI and not AI related? And how do you recommend high schoolers go about getting such opportunities? So for example, should they look for specific programs? Should they cold email, or are there any
Yeah, this
other
is a great
ideas that you
one,
have?
and being connected to entrepreneurship avenues at a young age is it's definitely a little bit more difficult as a high school student compared to maybe like a community college student or a college student. I think one of the best things that you can do for yourselves is really spend the summers being open to learning, whether it's that means you're working on your own projects and building your portfolio, or if it means doing a startup yourself, or if that means like taking a class and learning about AI and getting more technical knowledge there. There's so many community colleges that have summer programs. I know when I was a high school student, I did that in my summers. I just took some coding classes and some, I guess I took math classes too. But like, there's all these avenues of learning that are available to you if you look for them and don't um, your constrict the eligibility just because you're a high school student. Um, that being said, there's also, you know, cold emails, reaching out to people. If you are interested in something, if you see a startup that you want to be a part of, and you never you never hurt anyone by asking. Like you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. If you see something that you like that you want to be involved in, and they're a small team or they're just hiring or and you want just the experience, you don't mind the fact that you might be unpaid, which I think in high school that's typically the case. There's a lot of unpaid interns at that stage. If you don't mind that and are willing to just use that as an experience to learn and grow, I think it again doesn't hurt to send out a cold email and see if you can get involved. You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So if you see something, go for it.
Adding on to your point, the reason I specified cold emailing is because I've seen so many stories where people send emails to, for example, if they want to do research, they'll send it to professors, or if they want to join a startup, they'll send hundreds of emails to professors, startups, etc. And like none of them will respond except for one, and then that experience will like really change
Yeah.
them as a person. It'll really help them both like in terms of gaining skills and also on their resume as well.
Hmm.
So I definitely agree that just like shooting as many shots as you can, basically shotgunning,
Hmm.
can be very helpful, especially being a high schooler. And so now this question is kind of a personal question, but do you use AI in your
Yeah,
everyday
I
life?
mean, my everyday life, kind of tying it into, I feel like my life revolves around teaching at this point. Like I use it all the time. I use AI as well because I get a lot of students, people in high school, people in colleges, even trying to schedule time with me. I use like AI schedulers to help manage my time. I have used Zoom AI features like Copilot. Again, doing interview notes using Plot AI. Just chat GPT in general whenever I have a question and I can't figure something out when I try to make my Tableau dashboards or write some code has definitely helped in that sense. So yeah, like I think there's so many applications. It's just it's hard not to avoid it at this point.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I use AI a lot as
Yeah.
well. It's very helpful generally, both in school. Don't worry, I don't cheat using AI, but in school it's very helpful. And then also outside of school, with general tasks, general questions you have that's
Yeah.
kind of hard to get answered on Google. I definitely agree that ChatGPT and other AI tools can help. And so the questions I've asked up until now, I've tried to make them mostly about AI, but this one's more just related to what you do in terms of business. So, what's the most common misconception that teams have about
Ooh,
customer
yeah. So
discovery?
customer discovery, and some teams that aren't familiar with lean startup go in thinking that means you get to talk about your technology to potential customers. But that's not the case. When we talk about customer discovery, especially when you're in the early stages, just you just maybe have an idea or a very small MVP. You don't want to make one sale until you understand your business model and find your product market fit. So like with customer discovery, you're really trying to understand your customer's problem, but you're not showing them your technology. You're not talking about what you're working on. You're really just there to talk about your customer's problem and figure out what they're doing right now to solve it. It's really trying to discover the problem and how bad that problem is. So it takes a less biased approach because instead of prompting your customer with the problems you think you can solve, you're asking your customer what problems they have and learn more organically about a potential need or a shark bite problem out there. So that's definitely the main misconception. It's not you're not product testing. You're really testing your customer.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think I remember we had a entrepreneurship boot camp and you taught there for Shine Labs, and I think I remember you teaching us this exact concept as well, and we applied it in a lesson,
Yeah.
like activity. I'm pretty sure, yeah. So I remember that as well. That was cool. And so now I just wanted to ask, what was the first time you saw AI make a real practical impact in your work or industry? And so was it sort of before the AI boom with ChatGPT that we saw and OpenAI that we saw, or was it after the sort of AI boom?
I think for me, just like for the line of work that I'm in, when it comes to customer discovery, knowing again firsthand of how annoying and frustrating it can be to just do the mundane tasks, I was able to see how much faster like the teams that I was working with, how much faster they were able to get interviews, and the success rates of all my teams meeting their interview count amount just because of the fact that they can use these tools to help find people to speak with. So like I think just notes wise and just getting, and again tying that with AI summaries and note takers, that combination is truly just it's lethal because you get to extract information, you get to find the people that you need to speak with, and then also and be able to be on top of your customer discovery. So I think that has definitely changed the game for how we teach lean entrepreneurship too.
That's very interesting. And so next I wanted to ask, if you could redesign one part of your past projects with today's AI tools, what would you change?
I think this is a good question because I feel like I would have asked so many questions to ChatGPT about design for some of the projects I was working on, just because it's just a lot easier to get that information now instead of having to go out do the testing yourself and coming up with model CAD designs and going back and forth. I would definitely have used it in that design process to figure out how to use certain features in some of the the softwares I was working in, and it would have definitely helped that process, or shorten that timeline of product development by a ton.
That's very interesting. Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't have much experience in this aspect, so I can't say much. But I definitely say that now, at least with AI, it definitely helps out with a bunch of different tasks during building a startup and lean startup, especially with technical skills like we talked before about vibe coding, as well as with what you were
Yeah.
talking about with design. And so next, I wanted to ask: do you think AI is changing what kinds of startups get built compared to like 5 or 10 years ago?
Yes and no. I think a lot of startups that are coming out now are AI startups. So I think we're definitely seeing that a lot more. That being said, I think there's still industries that might have a little bit less more focus than they and they might actually need AI but aren't being touched because there's it's less visibility. So like I think as more startups emerge and the um, the type of impact gets more explored in potential applications in different industries, we're only going to continue to see maybe even more AI startup companies to the point where it, it'll be like 90% in a YC batch, what I think is actually happening right now, that almost all of the entire Y Combinator batches are AI startups. Like that's what the future looks like for a lot of investors.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw a LinkedIn post on that as well. It's just like most startups, and then also in general, most businesses that are being started nowadays, most
Mm-hmm.
startups are just they're always using AI, and I think this kind of ties back into our point about how many people just use AI because it's popular now, where they don't really think twice about how this problem that they're solving could be solved more efficiently, for
Mm-hmm.
example, without using AI, and or maybe it's just extra basically that
Exactly.
they don't need to be using. And I think one sort of example, yeah, one sort of example that I have is I think I remember talking to one of my friends. One of my friends, he had a business idea in my school, and he was talking to me about how we really want someone who's like good with engineering and technical skills. So one thing was that they were talking about how, oh, we really want to use AI in our product, and I kind of told them like you don't really need to use AI in your product. It's not something like first look at the problem you're solving, look at try to do customer discovery, find the people you're selling to, and then try to make this educational decision where you're like, okay, do I really need to use AI, or is it just some sort of extra cost that
Yeah,
we're
and
gonna have
that's
to deal with
exactly
later on?
right. Like I think that was the most perfect advice that you could give, and I think there's something that a lot of people don't think about when it comes to AI startups is like the hidden costs. You know, like the typical software without the use of AI, it's the 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 net profit margins are a lot higher than some of these AI tools too. So like especially if you're just starting out, that can add up really fast if you're working on something that scales really quickly and you don't know how to handle it. So just something to look out for. And again, you might not even need it. It could probably be just as successful without the use of it.
Exactly. So, yeah, AI can also cost a lot as well. Some people like both monetarily and also some people say for the environment, but that's a conversation for another day. So, next, I just want to ask: do you think AI could ever replace parts of business education, like learning lean startup methods?
I, I think I think AI in general is I see a bunch of startups and ed tech startups in particular that come in through my courses about this very topic. They're trying to convert their learning experience with AI, write a curriculum with AI, teach with AI, assign like assignments and make quizzes with AI. And I think while maybe for some under resourced areas that might help, especially if someone has like a really huge workload on their shoulders, I think it's a little scary to think about as well. Just because I'm a full believer that we learn best with a flipped classroom approach where other people give feedback, where ideas are exchanged. And if you do some an asynchronous format of classes, then you're losing that community aspect, right? Like the networking, the collaborativeness that you would have otherwise gotten just from a traditional classroom experience, and a traditional class. So like I think it could help in some areas, but I think especially for formative years where you're just starting to learn, how to think critically, and that's something that you learn along the way, as especially when you're younger. I think that's definitely at risk as people try to just teach every course with AI.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's pretty situational, especially it could be more helpful for those who don't have access to the necessary resources or the people who are, in their younger years where they're just learning these thinking skills. But in general, I would definitely agree that, being in an actual classroom environment and, learning within a community is probably the most efficient, kind of tying back to what we also talked about before with being with a team
Hmm.
rather than being alone. And so this is actually my last question that I have prepared for you today, and that is, how would you recommend high school or even college students to build a portfolio that
Well,
shows
that's a
smart
good
use of
question. And
AI?
again, like that's something people could be doing on their summers or side projects to um, build that expertise in AI, especially as you're trying to apply for colleges or look for future internships in the future. The biggest thing is, how is this going back to the kind of the theme is how is this impacting someone? Like, what is the impact of using AI to do X, Y, and Z? What problem are you really solving? And can you measure the impact? Especially like as you transition into, I feel like more adulting. That's how everyone talks is like impact. Like what is what is the end result for you doing this project? So, and before, if you want to brainstorm things before you start working on them, that's a great way to maybe do some customer discovery calls, figure out, okay, like what is this, what's a problem that I could solve, and there a lot of them could be something that you're yourself are dealing with, and maybe you're not alone in that. There's probably someone else that's dealing with the same problem. That's one place to start. But really finding a real problem out there and creating an AI use case for something that really matters. And like we were talking about, right? Like there's so many AI applications for things that don't need AI. So you want to make sure that you're building a portfolio of meaningful impact.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And then also, I think, especially if you're going into more of the technical aspect and you're trying to train models, for example, to solve different problems, there's many different public data sets out there that you can use for free, especially for practice. As you get more specific and you get more into domain specific issues, you're probably going to need to get data your own way through, your own surveys or also through asking private organizations. I think, especially for practice, just going on websites like kaggle.com, for example, just to get some data, learning how to train models, and then also maybe learning the technical skills behind them, just besides the coding as well. That can be very helpful, especially during the summer when you have lots
Yeah,
of
that's
free
great
time for high
advice.
schoolers specifically. And yeah, so that's everything I had prepared for today. So thank you so much for being here today, Anam. Thank you for your time and all the insights you shared. It was inspiring to hear your journey and your take on where AI is headed, especially for students like
Yeah.
me who are just getting started. So again, thank
Of
you so much
course.
for
Thanks
being
for
with me here
having me,
today.
and good luck with your AI journey. Can't wait to see what you do next, and where this podcast goes as well. Really insightful
Thank you.
discussion today.